Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Little Give. I'm looking forward to peeling back the layers of our guest today. Go ahead, introduce yourself. Tell us where you're from. Tell us what you're all about.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Renee Turner. I am the owner of Adjust the Angle. And really, this is a business that helps kids that have learning differences, learning disruptions, or disabilities. So that is what I do. I make an impact in kids' lives every day, both in person in my community as well as virtually. I also consult for some program directors, of private schools or entities of public schools, making sure that all the kids with special needs or learning differences have what they need to succeed and thrive, as well as coaching and training teachers. So that's kind of where I'm at in a nutshell.
Wow, thank you for sharing. Oh my goodness, that's so needed. Tell us how you got started with this.
Yeah, okay, so let's kind of go way back. I am the oldest of three, and my younger brother and sister, since I was the oldest and smartest and wisest, right? School was always really easy for me. And so by the time I kind of got into sort of upper elementary, I noticed my brother and sister were having a very different experience in school. And it was just very confusing. I'm like, duh, school's easy, guys. What's wrong? What's wrong? I don't understand. So really having this stark contrast between how I was experiencing school. In fact, I was actually a bully because I was too bored in school. So I was actually very mean and just bored out of my mind, to be honest. And they even skipped me a grade. They weren't sure what to do, all of that. And then here's my brother and sister really struggling with just on grade level stuff. And so I remember being in fourth grade after punching a kid in the nose, which, again, I was not a nice person. I was just bored. And whatever. I needed more challenge and stimulation, and then I'm watching my brother and sister just cry and struggle. And it hit me like, but why? I want to learn why, right? So if I'm bored with my schoolwork, I'm going to create my own little project and try to figure out why, because I care very much about my brother and sister, very much a protective big sister. And so it turns out that my brother and sister did end up having learning disabilities. And so it just made me curious, right? So even as early as fourth grade, I just got very curious. How do some people's brains work one way and another person's brain works a different way? And also my brother and sister were very different as well. So I started babysitting kids with special needs. Even kids that were older than me with very significant delays. So as a 12-year-old, I was changing a 15-year-old's diaper, right? So there were medical delays or just development delays, emotional, the kind of the whole gamut, all the way up through high school. And it really just, I just kept getting more and more curious about how do teachers do this? Like, how is everyone experiencing school so differently? And how do the teachers do this? That was kind of my question. And my mom was a teacher, but not for kids with special needs. So it was just very interesting. So I didn't step foot into my first special ed classroom until 19, and it changed my world. I loved it. They were nonverbal kids or non-speaking kids, and so they used sign or a communicative device. And they were about 9, 10 years old, and there were just amazing professionals that had devoted their lives to these kids. And I said, I want to be like that. So that's kind of how I got started. So yeah, I've been working with kids for over 20 years that have some kind of learning difference, delay, disruption, kids that, have been in the foster care system or, moved around a lot and there was a lot of disruption, or actual, documented disabilities and things like that too. So yeah.
Wow, I mean, that is quite the challenge. So, what was the first thing that you learned when you got in that room with nonverbal kids and you started experiencing it from a teacher's perspective?
Yeah. So up until that point, I mean, especially since I was a kid myself prior to that, my observation was if a kid has some kind of barrier to learning, then we just don't expect them to learn. That those had kind of been my experiences before. So that this was kind of the first time I was in a situation where even though there were significant barriers, the expectation is they learn. And that was just amazing to me. So so still having high expectations for kids that and giving them tools to overcome was just amazing. So instead of like, oh, you're just being lazy or you're a discipline problem, like you're just stupid, you're just never going to amount to anything. These professionals are like, hey, what tools do we need to get them to the next step? Right. And so it was always about what does the adult need to do to help keep this child moving forward? And customizing those plans, customizing those tools, and just seeing the real progress. So, I mean, I saw right away kids that used devices to speak actually reading on grade level. And so if you think about that, it's like, how does someone who doesn't talk read, right? Or write. So also becoming, a teacher myself in those first few years, I was able to teach kids how to read and write, even if verbally they were delayed for whatever reason. So my business mostly focuses on math. But yes, I've been a reading specialist, behavior interventionist, math interventionist, all the things. And it just really ensuring that adults don't give up on kids, right? We
Mhm.
should be their cheerleaders and be providing them with tools. And when something's not working, how can we adjust, right? Adjust the angle and make sure that they're on a path towards growth and becoming confident lifelong learners wherever they start.
Hi, my name is Justin Clark, and I'm the president of the board of directors for Driving Single Parents, a 501c3 nonprofit serving the citizens of San Antonio and Bexar County, Texas. I'm here today to tell you a little bit about the great work that our organization is doing for the citizens of San Antonio. What you're about to see is just a few photos and videos of the way that we're changing lives for single parents in and around San Antonio, Texas. Our first giveaway took place in April of 2017, just one short month after the formation of our organization. John, a Bexar County resident, was the victim of a horrible drunk driver incident. He and his daughter survived the crash, and we were so proud to give our first car to this deserving family. Fast forward to 2020, a very difficult year for nonprofits. We were able to secure 4 vehicles for single parents in need. Our organization, including our board of directors, list of partners, and portfolio of people we've been able to help in San Antonio, continues to grow, and it's all thanks to donors and local community organizations that have helped us along the way. This giveaway took place in 2021 and shows that we continue to help single parents even after the struggles brought about by COVID-19. Because of limited funds and the overwhelming need, we at Driving Single Parents are incredibly selective with the people we help. Some are victims of domestic violence. Others had a spouse pass away tragically, or otherwise fell on hard times. These single parents show adversity in the face of challenge and aren't looking for a handout. We offer a hand up and help get them back in the driver's seat. Many of the single parents we help go on to graduate college, get promotions, get married, mentor others, and some have even been so touched by the gift we gave them that they have decided to join our board of directors to pay it forward and ensure the continued growth of our organization. If you would like to help our organization continue to grow and continue to help single parents in need in San Antonio, Texas, and Bexar County, Texas, we would really appreciate your support. Please visit us online at www.drivingsingleparents.org. Thank you.
I love that. So you are there and you're in this class and you're teaching these kids and you're like, wow, there's so much here. This is so cool. What was it in you that made you think, hey, I think I could turn this into a business and help on a bigger level?
Yeah, so my business is only a year old. So it definitely I was a music major first. I had a piano scholarship, in fact. So I changed my major right away to education, and I double majored in elementary education. K through 8 is how it was, and then special education K through 12, as well as English learners. So I grew up mostly in South Florida, where a lot of kids, their first language isn't English, which now I live in Texas and there are many kids whose first language is not English. So even back in my bachelor's, I wanted to ensure that I was fully prepared. So when I stepped foot and was in charge of a classroom, that I wanted to know everything. so, so yeah, so I started in the public school system. I also worked as like a homeschool resource teacher for some parents that chose to homeschool their kids. I would provide special ed strategies. So I would basically train the parents on how to do what they, not to know how to do everything that a teacher does, but how to help their one kid with the one thing that they needed in that moment, right? And parents are really awesome, right? Like, so if you can teach a parent how to use effective strategies, whether it's just with homework at home or for those that do choose to homeschool. So those first few years, I was mostly public school, and then also like the tutoring, helping homeschool. The laws in Florida are, when you, at least at that time, when you homeschool, you kind of had to be overseen by a teacher, like a certified teacher had to sign off. So I did a lot of that. And then I've taught in a private school. I started a program in Georgia from pre-K all the way through 12th grade that allowed kids with special needs to actually be a part of a Christian private school that otherwise they wouldn't have had resources to know how to teach the learning differences, right? So I went in and built that program, and it still exists today, 15 years, 16 years later, back in 2008. And made sure that there were speech therapists or occupational therapists that would come to the school to help provide those types of supports as well. So really, my whole career. So then when I moved to Texas in 2008, I started working for a virtual online school. So it's public school, but virtually from home. And so they still have all the state standard testing and all those kinds of things. And so I helped create programs for kids with special needs and for English learners to actually be successful in a virtual setting. And then I've also gone back to some ISDs and all of that. Well, I had a baby 15 months ago now. So when I got pregnant again with my second, I was like, oh, I'm a little bit older now. My first one is almost 16. And so I was just trying to think through, how am I going to do the school district thing? And also with COVID, I saw the math scores just keep plummeting. I mean, the reading scores also, but math, and parents have less tools than they do for reading. Most parents know, hey, you should at least pick up a book. But for math, most parents are like, I don't know what to do with you. So I decided to just say, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm having a new life change anyway with my baby, and I'm going to just be my own boss and not have any walls. And while I have done private, public, homeschool, public, virtual, like I've done all the different settings, now I can actually serve anyone and everyone through my business. So, and I have the cutest little 15-month-old now too.
Well, that's awesome. I think it's so neat how like your entire journey has prepared you for being a business owner and being able to help on this broader scale. How do you like it? Do you like it better whenever you were like in the classroom, or do you like the virtual component better because you can serve more people?
I love that because I have been in the mix for 20 years and I've taught in multiple states. I still have, colleagues and teacher friends kind of in various settings. So I'll have the director of a Lutheran school call me and say, hey, I need a consult with this kid. And then I'll have, someone in Georgia like, hey, how do you do this 5th grade lesson? And then I'll have someone down the street like, hey, can you meet me at the library to do this? So I love the freedom and the flexibility. obviously, if I was just beginning in my career, I wouldn't have so many connections already established. So it is really nice to be with, a little second grader that has dyslexia one moment, and then a ninth grader in algebra 2 the next moment. So, and one virtual, one in person. So, right, I don't like to be bored. um, so with this job, I definitely I don't get bored. I don't do the same thing every day. And all of my students have very unique needs. So some of them are accelerating through a whole grade level, right? Because they're bored, right? Or they need more of a challenge. And I kind of shared that was a part of my story. So working with kids that are gifted and talented, we need to have high expectations for every kid wherever they're at, as well as, a child who's struggling. In a certain situation, making sure that, I'll even attend IEP meetings, or ARDs as we call them in Texas, or help a parent look over paperwork to make sure that everything is what they need to do.
So I also understand that you are an author. Why don't you tell us a bit about your authorship journey and the first book you wrote?
Yeah, this book, Why Your Parent Voice is Vital. Some parents, they just think that, oh, the teachers know everything, I'll just sign whatever they give me. But we forget that parents are an expert too. Like, you are an expert in your child. And yes, the teachers are experts in their field, right? Um, but they don't know your child like you know your child. So really the purpose of this book was to make sure that parents walk into these meetings knowing where they are an expert, and making sure that their voice is being heard at that IEP table, because what they know about their child is vital for the educators to be able to make that plan unique to them. So the I in the IEP stands for individual. So the series is called Keep the Individual in IEP. So if your child was diagnosed with dyslexia, we don't just want to say, oh, the dyslexia program's down the hall. Like, no, well, let's talk about Sarah specifically, right? Or let's talk about Jose specifically. Like, what exactly does he need? Not just, oh, if you're dyslexia, you go to the left. If you're autistic, you go to the right. So we need to keep that individual mindset every time we're developing an education plan for a child.
Hi, my name is Andrew Fraley, and I believe that sometimes we all need a little bit of help. If you're in the San Antonio community and you need some legal help, call me at 210-725-4658.
So I know that led you to write another book about math. Talk to the audience a bit about that book and how it serves.
So I kind of told you about how before COVID, I was kind of doing both math and reading intervention. And then as we were kind of rounding the corner of that, I realized the math instruction was just huge disconnect between the teachers and the parents, and honestly, even between some teachers. So I was a math interventionist for a little while in a school district, trying to help train teachers on how effective strategies. And honestly, sometimes we're just like, oh, just do a worksheet, just practice more, do some flashcards. It doesn't always stick, especially for kids with learning disabilities or differences, or if there's a huge gap. So really training teachers and training parents to not just look at a kid and say, hey, you're being lazy or you're a discipline problem, but say, hey, you must be stuck. Let's get you some tools to get you unstuck. Because as soon as we start putting that label of lazy or disrespectful or unmotivated or whatever, like, that's not actually addressing the problem. So if the problem is that they're missing instruction, or the instruction wasn't tailored to how their brain needed the instruction, then like, it's an instructional issue. It's not always a behavior issue. So that's kind of what I've found in my work over the years, is sometimes I was called into a situation to address behavior needs, and I actually found an instructional gap. Because most kids, they don't wake up every day and say, how can I bother my teacher or bother my parent today? they want to please, they want to show you how smart they are and how, it's like, mommy, look at me, look at what I can do. That's where they're coming from. But if they can't do it, I mean, what's the alternative, right? They're stuck.
Yeah, they don't have the tools maybe to be able to do the
Right.
things that they want to do. And so they're just kind of misguided energy sometimes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how did you end up in your authorship journey? So we know you're a teacher for a while, then you end up, starting your own business. And so what made you think, hey, I need to write some books so I can get this information out there in a different way?
Yeah, a lot of it has been my actual clients. They the feedback that I kept getting was, we have seen multiple teachers, multiple specialists, multiple, we've tried everything, right? That's usually what I hear. Um, and you're the first person that actually got them unstuck, right? And
Mhm.
and I do think that a lot of it is because behavior is addressed first, or behavior is assumed first. And I come at it as, hey, I wonder if you missed a day of school or something. I usually will say that. Even if I'm not sure. I'm like, maybe you missed that lesson. Like maybe you were sick one day and just missed it, right? So when I communicate to the child, like, hey, maybe there's just, it's not your fault. It's not the teacher's fault. Like, what if you just missed a part of the lesson? You know? So let me teach you this lesson that maybe you missed. And so right away, they're like, oh, she doesn't think I'm bad or stupid or lazy or disrespectful or any of the other, you know, lies that the kids attach to themselves, or sometimes adults attach to them. And then it's just that sometimes that's just where the barrier is. I mean, if you believe that you can't do it, how are you supposed to do it? Right.
Right.
So, yeah. So clients have said, like, do you have a book? Do you have, like, what's your strategy? And I'm like, I just look at the kid in front of me and address that kid. Over the last few years, especially since COVID, um, I've been trying to keep more notes because my frame of mind has always been, well, I just do something individual. Like, so I couldn't write a book because I'd have to write a book for Susie and Jose. Like, I'd have to write,
A lot of books.
9 million books. And then the one book that I write doesn't help anyone else, right? So I started just saying, okay, well, what are some themes? What are some things that, even though it may not get parents or teachers all the way without some more specified strategies, but how could
Mhm.
we at least make this angle shift, right? How can we at least adjust the angle just a little bit to where my clients aren't saying, well, my kid's just lazy and refuses to do math? What if they were coming to me and saying, like, hey, I think they missed something somewhere? Like, even just that piece right there accelerates the learning process so much.
Right. Well, it's
So,
awesome all the things that you're doing to help kids and help parents because a lot of it is probably just misunderstanding. Like I said earlier,
mhm.
misguided energy where they really,
Yeah.
like you said, you were bored and so you were a bully, and these kids, they
Oh,
don't
man.
mean to be bad or mean or not pass. They want to pass probably more than anything. They just don't have the
Right.
tools yet. And somebody like you who says, I see you as the human being you are instead of
Right.
the problems that are coming out in your, disabilities or
Mhm.
whatever they're working on. So I think that's really cool. I think it's a great
Yeah.
strategy.
Yeah, and I have worked, if there are any teachers watching this and they're like, "Oh, well, you haven't seen my school or my kids." I have worked in Title I, very rough kids where we've had lockdown. I've had to restrain kids. I've had the whole thing. I had a poor kid that well, I had a kid, he'd pick up a filing cabinet and throw it at me. So, I mean, I've dealt with real behaviors from real 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 kids, really in the thick of it. And I just decided, I'm going to build relationships with kids and I'm going to find the tools that work. If I can help, a kid that's non-speaking learn to read, I can help you learn to do this math, or if I can help this kid, I know that I can help you. Um, and so I just decided, like, even if a child had in school suspension or something like that, they did something in another class, I still would make sure the administration knew they still come to my class, right? I still am providing instruction. So they don't get out of my class. So even if a student was completely inappropriate and definitely deserved the referral or the suspension, um, they the principal would bring them to my class and they would still learn with me that day. And then they would go back and continue their in-school suspension. So I definitely understand each situation is so different. And that's kind of why I refused to like even think through writing books, because I'm like, how, like, there isn't one thing that works for any kid, right? But definitely approaching it as, like you said, as a human being, as, hey, like, there's something missing here and let's look for it together and get you unstuck. Because I know it's there. So, and I'm too stubborn to give up.
Well, I think it's a beautiful approach, And that's actually a big give that you're giving to this world, which leads me to my two questions I ask every guest. So the first one is, can you give the audience an example of a little thing that they can do in their community? Might just be a little give on their end, but might make a big impact on the other side.
Yeah, I think one of the things to do, as far as like, obviously, if you're a teacher, make that shift of, okay, if this isn't a behavior problem, what is something instructionally I could do, or environmentally or relationally that I could do, instead of just jumping to labeling a kid as a behavior problem. Again, and sometimes this takes creativity and it takes so much patience, and which I know teachers already have hearts of gold that are. But if your parents or aunt, uncle, grandparents, I would say the biggest piece that brings kindness, because if you think about it, kids, their whole world is school. Like, that's their job. That's where their identity is. If they're at the top of the class or the bottom of the class, or if they do have a label. So bringing in these words of, I see you growing, I see you learning, I see progress. And if you see them stuck, say, hey, what tools can we find together? Right? Like, hey, I saw this lady on Little Give. Let's look her up, see what tool she has, or something else, right? So be a partner with a child that's struggling and say, hey, let's hand in hand find a tool. And one of the I'll use humor sometimes to I'll say, like, show a nail and then a screwdriver, and I'm like, is this going to work? Like, that's not the right tool for that job. So there's nothing wrong with the nail and there's nothing wrong with the screwdriver. They're just, that's not the right tool for that. So sometimes we're stuck because we're trying to use the wrong tool in the right way, or the right tool in the wrong way, right? So being the adult in that situation and saying, like, hey, there's some kind of disconnect. So one way is, I like, even just bringing math into real life is really helpful to make kids, to help things make sense. So if you feel like you're at the bottom of the class and that you're stupid and that you're not good in math, you can't do anything right, you could even just label a water bottle like empty. Oh, how does this work? Empty, half full, right? Okay, so empty is 0. 100% is full. Like, what would half be? Right? And then what's less than or more than? So even as young as 3, 4, 5 years old can understand this. And then even in middle school, when we start talking about converting fractions, decimals, percents, just kind of bringing real life into math. So instead of like, oh, go get your, fill up your cup for water, you could say, like, start bringing in some mathematical language and really just like, so one of the things that I say is, I have confidence that we can figure this out together. And so you bringing calm to their chaos is so important. And some kids can mask and hide that chaos better than others, but you bringing that calm to their chaos is a very kind thing to do, not just for your own kids, but for the kids around you. And so bringing not just calm, but confidence, right? Like, I'm confident that I see that you're stuck now, but that's okay. Like, I was stuck, and, share a different story. So, really, just talking about that resilience, talking about that, being stuck is always temporary, but being stupid has this like permanent thing,
Mm.
right? So, changing even just that terminology of like, well, you're just stupid in math or you're not good in math to you're just stuck, like something's stuck, and I know you'll get unstuck, I think is a much kinder way to approach a kid who's struggling.
Yes, you don't wanna give that belief to them that, like, you're not good enough, but why try? And that
Hmm.
that can happen easily whenever you have a kid who's impressionable at those younger ages. So,
Yeah,
thank you for sharing all of that. The
yeah.
second question is, can you give the audience an example of a time in your life sorry about that. Can you give the audience an example of a time in your life where somebody did something little for you that might have just been a little give on their end, but really made an impact on you and in your life?
Yeah, so when I think I was 15 and or 15, 16, and I became a waitress and was trying to figure out college and, just finances and all of that. And there was a lady in my church that had their own business. And I knew they had a handful of employees. And I was like, well, if they know how to deal with their finances, like how does she juggle other people's finances? Like that was just a curiosity question for me. So I just asked her one day and she was like, "Yeah, come over. I'll make you lunch and I'll show you all my spreadsheets." And so that definitely opened my mind, and even here I am, a long ways later as a business owner, and I'm like, "Ooh, it's a good thing I feel comfortable with spreadsheets and things." But that was just a little give for her, and it set me up. Like, I was able to help organize my own finances, pay for college, and throughout throughout even now as a business owner. So that little give that she gave to the 15-year-old of like, sure, let me show you how we do payroll for our employees, really did make an impact for me. So
Oh, that's awesome. You just never know where those
yeah,
moments are gonna be at. You just kinda try your best to do what you can
right.
for and then you just never know what's gonna land in a big way like that. So thank you
Yeah.
very much for sharing that story. What about nonprofits? Do you have any nonprofits you're excited about?
Yes. So I'm in Dallas. I think I mentioned that, Dallas, Texas, and there Dallas is such a huge city, and
Mhm.
anything under the sun is in Dallas with millions of people. However, there have been pockets of places in Dallas that are food deserts. And when my oldest was little, I used to take him every week to this tiny little farm in South Dallas called Bonton Farms, and we would feed the goats and milk milk the goats. And my son would walk. So here he was as a second grader, and he would just go, and there's like 100 goats following him, and I'm like, bye, see ya. And he would go out and do this huge loop around the lake with these goats. And but what started as just some guy that recognized that there was a food desert growing some tomatoes in his front yard, is now this amazing story of multiple farms, and they even have a market, and they have rehabilitation for people that have nonviolent criminal records, and homeless, and like just all of these things have just filtered into this tiny teeny little place. And it's just the epitome of, there was a structural, like a systematic oversight in Dallas when they were putting, the Walmarts and I don't know, the grocery stores. There just wasn't access to grocery stores here. It would take 3 public transportation buses for people in this area to get to a place with produce. And so this guy Darren was like, I'm gonna just go there and grow some tomatoes. And so just this little thing that he did impacted my family because my son loved going out with the goats. And but it's impacted just countless people here, and more people are following his footsteps of, instead of just making more bus routes, let's actually grow food here. it's just been wonderful. So if you're looking at or if you know of any food deserts, or you've never even heard of a food desert, I would encourage you, even if you're in a big city, to look up how sometimes we make these oversights. And again, I don't want to say it's intentional, but it's definitely intentional when it's not getting fixed. So, or when it's not being addressed. So just this nonprofit, really saying, okay, well, if the city isn't going to take care of it, I am, is just really inspiring to me. And I feel like kind of goes hand in hand with the philosophy that I have of so many kids are taken care of in their school settings, but there are also kids even in your own child's school, right, that are being overlooked, right? And there's some kind of structural change or an instructional change that's needed for that kid to thrive. So I kind of feel hand in hand, just obviously in a very different application, but looking for any inequity and figuring out what's something little. So for Darren, it was, let me grow some tomatoes in my front yard. And for me, it's like, okay, I'm going to teach you how to read and do math. And I don't care what your disability is.
That's wonderful. I love this nonprofit. What a great idea. I think it's so neat when somebody says, well, there's a need here. What can I do? Instead of waiting for somebody else to go out and solve the problem, you can do something yourself. So thank you for sharing that. You've been such a great guest today. Why don't you tell the audience where they can reach you, they can find out more about you, they can seek out your services, and they can get those books?
Yeah, so the ebooks are just really short and sweet. They're, I mean, yeah, they're just $10. It's just meant for you to just make these tiny little shifts that really make a big impact right away. So my email is stephanie@adjusttheangle.com. My website is adjusttheangle.com. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. And I do have a wait list depending on the time of year for different either instructional coaching or private tutoring or speaking engagements, things like that. But that's why I did want to just make sure that there are resources available year round, regardless of how full my schedule is. So if you are in America, then the IEP book would be for you if you have a child with an IEP or 504. And then if your child is struggling in math, while it's geared towards fifth grade teachers, that framework really is flexible to fit within a lot of different contexts and grade levels. And I'm going to continue to add to that series over time. So we'll have kinder through 8th grade and maybe beyond too. We'll see.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being on today and sharing all of your insight. I really do appreciate it. And for everybody who's out there watching today, go find out more, learn more about all she's doing. And if you need help with something, reach out. And if you need help and she's not available, check out those amazing books. And if you were excited about that nonprofit she shared, please do go visit their website, find out more. And if it's something that you really can get behind, please go make a donation. $1 or $5 multiplied by the many, many people we have watching this episode today can make a huge impact. Thank you again for being on. We really, really appreciate you spending your time with us today. And we will see everybody next week. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Little Give. If you would like to learn more about how I highlight ordinary people doing extraordinary things to help others, or maybe you'd like to be a guest, or maybe you know a nonprofit that you would like to see featured on a future episode of Little Give, you can find all the information on our website at littlegive.com. If you'd like to get involved with our kindness clip segment, please do send in those videos. Send them via email to cindy@littlegive.com. Or you can tag us on any social media under Cindy Whitteman or #LittleGive. If you'd like to know more about our podcast, you can also find us on all major streaming platforms under Little Give Podcast. Please do find our Facebook group under Little Give TV show and join it. We'd love to keep you up to date with future episodes. Thank you all so much for watching, and I can't wait to highlight the next ordinary person doing extraordinary things to help others. See you next time.